Recording now.
Okay. But, because we have our committed, all right, you're back. Excellent. Welcome back. I would like it to make it about our two students who have joined us too, answering specific questions there. So who would like to start with an introduction? And I have a question that I thought would help me shape the conversation today. And so I want to know what has brought you here today. And I'm going to answer that question too. So what has brought you here today? Whoever wants to start.
I can go. I'm actually not a student. I'm a retention specialist. I'm a part of the conference planning committee, but I did go to CSU. I got a bachelor's of science in civil engineering. So I'm just really looking forward to really anything that you're going to share, because I didn't really attend any type of career development and exploration throughout undergrad. So I'm just really curious what you're going to share today.
Okay, great.
I'm a senior at CSU. I'm majoring in math with minors in computer science and creative writing. So I'm just here to see what kind of careers and how to get there, really, because I'm kind of stressed about graduating in the spring. I don't really know where to go from here.
All right, awesome. How about you, Betty? What brought you here today, other than you had to be, right?
Hello, everyone. My name is Betty Sims. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am also a retention specialist at the AAC. I'm really excited for this session, actually, because we recently expanded our services. We got a second grant to serve and to really build out our services for students in STEM majors. And so I am just really excited to learn anything I can about continuing to support our students in those fields. So I'm excited. I don't just have to be here. I'm ready.
All right. I stand corrected. All right. My name is Chase. My pronouns are he, him. Thank you for having me here today. I have this sense of urgency in working with students right now, and I'm sure a lot of us feel that way who are engaging students day to day and helping them figure out their next steps beyond the university. So I'm a trained counselor. I'm a licensed professional career counselor here in Colorado. And so my primary goal in the Career Center is where I'm based. However, my focus is on STEM majors. I started in the College of Engineering. I spent some time there thinking about those majors. Now I'm in the College of Vet Med, Biomedical Sciences, in my 8th year here on campus. I actually graduated from CSU undergrad anthropology and did a master's during the Great Recession in career counseling and career development. So I spend a lot of time talking with employers. I spend a lot of time working with students and trying to figure out and predict the future, right? And I said that in my last session, but I'm going to say it again. What I sit around and do all day is talk to students and present to students on what the future might look like. And Betty and I were talking before everyone else entered the room. And this is a topic I presented on before. And I started tearing down my presentation early about Monday of this week because things have changed, right? COVID has changed everything. And you're going to hear me mention that a lot through this presentation. Students have Zoom fatigue. Students are wondering how to engage employers, how to find internships, how to use their degree in the age of COVID. I think we are so fortunate right now. If you are in a STEM major, I know my degree, anthropology, during the Great Recession of 2008 didn't translate as well as mathematics will, as well as a lot of the STEM majors in my college and in the College of Natural Sciences. So biology, all those great majors in natural sciences. CVMBS is, we are natural sciences, but we're applying that discipline to the human body. And, so that's kind of the difference between us. And so what I want to talk about today is, not so much, I could sit here in this chair and I could tell you, mathematics, man, what a great degree. Here are all the things you can do with it, right? But what we're thinking about right now is, the possible recession coming on, right? We'll talk about later on in the presentation the current growth of a variety of different industries, and I have some links I want to share with you because as we move into talking about how are we going to get there, it's really action-oriented steps, right? Most of my time in the summers before the COVID world, I spent working with employers. And I would always ask the same question over and over again to different companies that are doing diagnostics on disease research, that are doing pharmaceutical industry, that are hiring our students in, from season to season. And one thing is clear, CSU students have such a great reputation in the state. Our students, I sell them while I'm out there, right? It's really easy to market our students. So that's one thing that is clear. Our students, CSU students, are in demand, right? And so I'm always asking employers, what are you looking for from students? And typically they never mention a class. They never mention Stat 301. They never mention OChem. Laboratory skills, that's something that often comes up. But where everything boils down to, and this is cliche, this hasn't changed over the years. When I ask this question, I know the answer to it. They're looking for students who can collaborate and who can build relationships with team members and work effectively in groups. That goes for all of our STEM majors. Even in anthropology, that was the answer that I figured out over time, And so wherever you go next, as you're choosing a graduate program, if you think that is right for you, and we're going to talk about that process and how to make that decision, because that's what this session is about. Whether you're applying to graduate programs, internships, jobs, really any experiential learning opportunity, the key to the door is being able to, and I'm not one of those individuals that came to me naturally, right? Now I can talk to Betty one-on-one and most of you here one-on-one just fine. But put me into an interview or a group of people or just picking up the phone and cold calling, and that is that feels different, right? And so if you were to do anything in your next steps in preparing for your career, I think finding places to sharpen our communication skills, and that looks different today, right? Because we're on Zoom, and it feels more difficult. And I'm sure a lot of you would agree with this. At the end of my day, I am so fatigued, unlike ever before, on communicating in this way. It uses a different sense. So that is what I'm hearing from the field as we are still engaging employers, bringing them to campus. So two things that I'm hearing over and over again. Communication skills, collaboration skills is the key to finding and getting accepted to graduate programs and finding jobs and internships, right? And so today we're talking about exploration, and this is an action-oriented proposition, right? And I'm going to talk about today because it's especially for seniors, finding places to network. And I think access is unlike ever before, right? Typically networking, going to info sessions, whether it be graduate school fairs, is easier to pull off these days. And I think students can reasonably put those activities on their calendar, because all you have to do is click on a Zoom session, get the information you want, and do what you will with that. So we're going to talk about that exploration process, where to find opportunity, how to approach it, right? And we're going to define a strategy for decision making, right? And so on a scale of 1 to 10 for our student, where are you at in deciding that you want to go to graduate school? Have you thought about that? 1, it's not something I want to do, but I think it might make me more competitive. 5, I'm kind of on the fence, Chase, on if I want to go to graduate school or not. 10 being I'm absolutely going. Talk a little bit of where you're at on that scale.
I'm more on like around 5, because
Okay.
I at first didn't think that I wanted to go to graduate school, but I knew that it could make me more marketable, and now I'm thinking about it more, but still not sure if I want to do that right away.
Okay. All right. So hopefully my goal today is to bring you down to a 3 or bump you up to a 9 and showing you how to evaluate that process. And program evaluation. How do we evaluate programs that are a fit for us? For example, a lot of my students, seniors right now, this is the most popular question I have in appointments. Chase, the job market, it's crumbling. And if you listen to the media and other outlets, it would feel like our world is crumbling. But job market is in pretty good shape for STEM majors right now. But does it make sense to go to a program that's in Portland, Oregon, for example, where you're having to put significant investment in housing, rebuild your network, versus staying at CSU and not disrupting your life like you would going out of state? And so I want to talk about that evaluation process too, because I think that is critical in as students think about what their next steps are. And then number 4, answering all your questions. Now, I was prepared for a larger audience today. I did a session this morning, and so I've evolved my presentation because a presentation that is designed for 15 people looks different than for 4 people. And I'm going to include myself, because I often learn from my audience too. And so I'm so thankful that you're here. Please tell me what you're hearing, whether it's your colleagues, whether it's your student peers, as we get into this content, because I'm kind of selfish too. I'm learning a lot of information as I'm working with other people across campus and industry, but I learn so much from you too. So please speak up. Tell me how you see the world. Tell me your lens, because I want to learn from you as well. Okay. So steps to STEM exploration. Who is interesting and how can we find these individuals? This is how these questions are answered. In my last session, I have a lot of students who are, when they're trying to make a decision, and I think this is just a generational thing, and I would include myself in this too, is when we have a question to answer, usually we go to Google. I'm sure you have put in mathematics, jobs, right, into a Google search. And it's a rabbit hole. You might end up watching a YouTube video on, baking cakes at a high altitude. That's usually my internet experience when I'm looking for something. But figuring out what to do next is, number 1, we need to think about it in the short term. I'm sure your parents and your peers often deal with that question, what am I going to do for the rest of my life, right? One thing I want to convince you of today is to really polish and refine the question of, what can I do next? That is a burden worth carrying, as opposed to what I want to do for the rest of my life. And often when students come to me and ask me that question, Chase, especially in STEM, right? Because you're used to collecting data, evaluating information, and making a decision. and your career path, we're unable to do that, right? We're unable to look out into the future and really make predictions there. And I often offer up to students, if I could show you, if I could pull a card out of my pocket and say, this is where you're going to be in 10 to 15 years, would you want to see that card, right? I mean, probably not. That would deflate us from day to day as we seek, because the stress we feel and the anxiety of what we're going to do next can often propel us in coming to a session like this, right? It often it helps us seek those things that we want to learn, and that is an exponential process. So I hope to convince you of that today. Resources. I'm going to give you a ton of resources, and I'm going to show you how to use those today on how to decide on programs and evaluating those industries that require a master's or not, right? And the viability of what's happening in those industries. I have a report from an economist I went to last week from Michigan State. His name's Phil Gardner. He has an interesting writing style for a data person. So you kind of have to ignore that. But it's the most update information that I have at least heard or been around in determining where recruiting is going right now with all of our majors across campus. But for our purposes, STEM, because choosing a program, I think that is part of the evaluation process. Where is this going? Where is certain industries that are growing or that have totally dissolved, like hotel, restaurant management, service industries that are just, are hurting right now. And so knowing the job market, getting a pulse on industry, at least understanding it in the short term in your evaluation process of how you want to use your, for example, mathematics degree. All right, I'm going to stop, take a time out. I've been talking a lot. What are some other questions that could shape our conversation today? I'm going to put it back to my wonderful audience because I know we see students and we're around students. What are some things that you're hearing from students in what the future might look like?
I'll share a little bit about what I've heard from students, just in general. So I have a few students who are getting ready to graduate. And so I definitely hear a lot of anxiety and uncertainty about the future. I think you really said it well when you mentioned that folks are used to gathering all the information that they possibly can and then making a plan, and that can be really soothing, especially when folks are getting ready to make a big transition. And so right now it's particularly stressful because we don't, it's not possible to know all the information that we could have known maybe even last year. So I definitely am thinking about a couple of students who have recently really questioned their decision, right? So working with one student who, as long as I've known them, have been very much I really want to go into a career field after I graduate. But the last conversation I had with them, they were like, well, actually I'm thinking about grad school now, because there's that uncertainty piece, right? And so having conversations with them around how can they quickly gather some information, how can they in a short amount of time create a plan, right, for them that feels really validating to where they're at, if that makes sense. Yeah, so definitely I see students kind of ping-ponging back and forth, right? And I also really appreciated what you said about shifting the thinking from what will I do, what will my career be, to what will I do next. And I think that's a really important shift that I'll definitely incorporate into my conversations with students moving forward.
Thanks, Betty. Appreciate that comment. Others?
I think so. From my experience, I started off with thinking that after I graduate, I just want to go and straight and find a career or a job or something. And then lately, I've just been considering the option of grad school more, but it's like slowly coming up on the deadlines and stuff, so it's harder to consider that option now, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of my friends, I've been in like the same boat, where they were thinking about taking a gap year, whether that means like finding a job in their field or just getting their life together before they go to grad school. But a lot of us don't really know what we're doing, I think, just from my friends and such.
Yeah. How much is the economics a part of that as far as the investment in those into graduate school? You know, student loans, I know, are something that can be on a lot of our students' mind, right? We have a lot of first-gen students. That was me. I'm still paying loans off from graduate school, and I graduated in 2013. So the money I make from CSU, I give it right back to them. So for loans. So is that something that that you, can I just ask that you're considering the investment there, and if it's worth that?
Yeah, that's also one of the things I'm considering. Okay. For sure.
Okay. You know, I put this iceberg up here because I think it illustrates a point of what is hidden right now. And this was pretty consistent in the pre-COVID world, but and this is something I had to practice in finding those information, because information is so elusive right now and it's changing day to day. But I'm going to share some events with you later on in this presentation that I would encourage you to come to, because talking to people who are doing things and taking those steps that you want to take, were the top of the iceberg, representing that information that is clearly visible through the internet and through information that often is, you know, like a sign on the side of the highway. But in my experience, I mentioned earlier in my presentation, for my license, for my counseling license, I have to count up my hours every year and submit those to be recertified as a state sanctioned counselor. And usually I average about 8,000 to 10,000 hours with students, right? And in most of those success stories of finding the right graduate program, in finding a job, finding an internship, rarely, not rarely, I would say 15% of the time, you can find that information on the internet, apply to it, and receive an offer. But a more informed search process is talking to people, engaging with our wonderful peer advisors, our wonderful academic advisors, because they are in touch with so many different ideas across campus, whether it be in meetings, whether it be through students. And that was something that I ignored as an undergraduate. And I figured out really quickly of, number one, it's a skill I had to develop. Number two, that is where information exists. It's with other people. And I think access, as we mentioned earlier, to getting that information can be, more accessible than ever before, right? A lot of our students can't go to networking events in Denver or can't go to certain events around town because of transportation issues. But, Zoom has at least provided, barring fatigue, ways to access information through people that would be harder to access. And a lot of the employers I'm working with right now are starving to interact with students because we're all, socially starved at the moment. So a lot of my presentation, I'm trying to encourage you to fill your calendar, especially as a senior, right? Especially as a senior in deciding, those parallel paths, graduate school versus finding a job, right? And often it's really hard to hold those ideas in your head at the same time, right? Because you have one foot in one door and one foot out. But I think it's a good strategy, especially in the COVID world, if you apply to graduate programs that you were remotely interested in before the graduate school explosion comes. And I think that's going to be fall 2021, right? When, because as the economy a recession is on the horizon. It has to be, we're already in one. And so the last recession, and usually typically with all economic recessions, the popularity of graduate school explodes, right? And that's not going to happen in this application cycle yet because, number one, we just don't know what the future holds, but it will become more clear as we get into the summer months, as we go through the winter, finally with COVID, and we understand what we're up against. And so fall 2021 application explosion with graduate school, I think, exists. Now, what does that mean? It might mean it's more competitive getting into graduate school, but it might mean it opens up a lot of opportunity in the job market as well. So I don't know. It's why it's so hard to have these conversations anymore, because information is changing constantly. But let's see if we can get closer to what that answer might be further down the road here. All right. As I mentioned earlier, building relationships, connecting with those people, doing the work, and seeking experiential opportunity, I believe, in all the time I have spent with students, is the key to making this decision on, is graduate school something I should pursue? Or does the job market present opportunities for me as well? And with the mathematics degree, I work with a lot of mathematics students across campus. The career education manager in natural sciences, Amy Kaleen, and I share a lot of students who are interested in a lot of similar things. And so some of the current, I think, great advice right now for the job market is, what does the COVID response look like, right? There will always be data involved, and data analytics. Mathematics is a huge part of addressing COVID right now, right? If you looked on the FEMA job site right now, there's quite a few jobs in addressing the COVID response. No matter what, wherever students go next, I would guarantee that 95% of them who are going into diagnostics, data science, biotech industry, life science industry are going to be retrained, right? And so students should not think when they graduate, don't spend time on what I don't have, right? Because you will always feel that way. That is human nature, right? But how can you present yourself in what you do have from your degree, and in those transferable skills that allow you to work in jobs that are STEM related, that require training for you to start. And so many of those jobs, many of those students who have come after you, who have gone to graduate programs or who have gone out and got a job, they, and let's look at some of those. I pulled up and this is one thing with Zoom. I want to show, I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment. I put a bunch of links here on the side that I want to go into here in a bit, but let's track some of those, for example, mathematics undergraduates and what they're doing now. All right. I think that can be helpful. So give me 1 second to make this pivot. The awkward silence of screen sharing in our Zoom world. Okay, here we go. And so in generating ideas of what is required for different jobs, and question number 2, where are those students who have come before me from CSU, and where are they now? And so let's take a look at how we can gather some information there. And so I'm going to share my screen with you, my LinkedIn profile. This is a great place to come up with options in trying to determine where CSU students are going and what types of education they have in getting there. And so this is my silly little LinkedIn profile. I'm a half fan of LinkedIn for various reasons we should discuss in a future presentation, but it is part of job search. I've finally accepted that, but I don't know, something about LinkedIn has always unnerved me a little bit, but here's where it can be useful. So if we go to my LinkedIn, I obviously went to Colorado State University. If I click there, it's going to take me to the alumni page. If I click on the alumni page and I type in mathematics, and I search, we don't want to know where those graduates from 1900 are. We don't want to ask that question, but let's do 2013. This can help generate, I think, a list of possibilities as you think about where are those students going from mathematics. Now you're going to see advisors in here. You're going to see a lot of folks that don't have a mathematics background, for example. This could be any background: biotechnology, mechanical engineering, anthropology even, although there's a lot less of us that graduate, pretty small cohorts in anthropology. But it's interesting where these folks are going. A lot of them are working from CSU. You know, a lot of them are working in different industries. And here are some of those people. And so this is a great place to see, okay, mathematics degrees, where are they working and what are they doing with that education they gained from CSU? So this can help generate a list of possibilities. And what you will begin to notice as you go through here is that people are working in industries, sometimes that have nothing to do with mathematics, but often that are directly aligned with a student's major. So that can be helpful. Now, how about deciding if I want to go work somewhere, do I need a graduate degree, right? So I'm going to share another Now, this website is tied into the labor department. And so as you're thinking about where should I go next, does it require a graduate degree? This is real-time information of people reporting salaries. So when you go to negotiate your first job offer, this gives regional salary data, but it also can tell us what students are required for different industries. Let's look at data science. So you plug that into the occupational search. Here are those industries connected to data science. If we did bioinformatics, it gives detailed information, hot industry, it looks like the type of knowledge, but what we're interested in today is what is the percentage of people working in that industry that have graduate degrees? This can be helpful. Oh, not available. Of course, the one I pick. Okay, let me try another one. Let's go microbiology. That happens. Okay, let's look at microbiologists, for example. Okay, so again, same question, people working in microbiologists. Does it require a graduate degree? Let's check. Okay, so there's a lot of folks working with bachelor's degree, as we see right here in the education section, that don't require a master's degree, right? And so that would be one stop that you'd want to make sure as you're thinking about, do I need continuing education, which you will always need? Does it require a bachelor's degree, or I'm sorry, a master's degree, or even a PhD in some cases? Or does it require here's a new popular, the post-baccalaureate certificate. We have a ton of those that are available at CSU now, and they're growing, it seems like every semester on what is being offered. And so if you didn't want to make the investment, sometimes $40,000 into a graduate degree, how could you get continuing education with less time and less money? You know, that is on a lot of our minds these days. What is the most efficient path to take? In those graduate degree certificate programs, which you can find on the graduate school website, they have a ton of them. And, you know, the beauty, I think, of mathematics is it applies to many, many places in the world of work, right? And so how could you add, based off your interest in the types of questions that you want to solve, in gaining continuing education that would allow you to enter that market, you know, without spending 2-3 years on a graduate degree writing a thesis, right? And so if I was to present and ask that question, what are, Marlena, those questions that you're curious about and want to work on? What if I asked you that question? If you came to my office, that would be a question I would ask you. If in a dream world, what questions do you want to work on?
I'm super interested in artificial intelligence and machine learning, just figuring out how to make things more efficient, I think, and more effective for people and their use, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so we all know that, you know, artificial intelligence, it has taken over, you know, a portion of our working world. So, you know, where could you find that? Where could you find that degree program? You know, I've looked at those degree programs at CSU. I don't think there's a certificate in artificial intelligence. There's definitely graduate programs out there. How could you be sure of that? You know, I think going out, finding an internship, which those of us at the Career Center, we help you every step of the way in finding those opportunities, could help clear those intentions of applying to graduate school. But putting some, you'll see in that report, that economic report that I posted to the chat, that the market right now is preferring experience over education. Now, I think that comes with a couple of caveats. But that is typically what happens in a recession as well. That's another attribute of recessions is there's work to be done, obviously, within the STEM fields. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. You could probably go out and find, you know, hands-on experience work, internships, and get that experience, build wisdom, build your basket of tools in making a decision. If I want to go to the grad school, I would feel more confident about that and where that money was going. Okay. So we looked at LinkedIn, connecting with those individuals that have come through the program. I get those inquiries from students at least a couple times a semester in regards to the graduate program that I went to. So that would be a good first step. For any student out there considering graduate programs, contact the graduate coordinator. Ask them for a list of students who are current or who have gone through that program, and if they would talk to you. Most programs take those inquiries every semester, and they have a list of students that are willing to speak to where they're at now and how they've used that graduate degree. So asking those department advisors for current students, critical. Putting those virtual events and industry information sessions on your calendar. That is a place, and you graduate in December or May?
In May.
In May, okay, so you're coming up. All right, so let me take a time out here. What could you, from everything you've heard, I just want to check in on if I'm connecting here. What could you do next, right? Because that is our topic today. Not what I want to do the rest of my life, but what could I do next? And since we're talking career exploration and we have a great example of what that looks like, right? With you graduating, I mean, this is perfect. You're graduating soon. What could you do next in taking a step forward in, number one, eliminating that pressure and bringing down some of that anxiety that comes with graduation. And that is my primary goal today: eliminate or reduce anxiety and stress as it comes to this decision. What could you do next in taking a step forward in your own planning?
I think talking to the Career Center will help in looking at the alum on LinkedIn, like you said. I think just continuing to explore possible careers is a step I can take.
All right. No, that is a great answer. And I always offer this to students that if you want to schedule with me or your career education manager, go on Handshake and you can get right on their calendar to do that. And so reach out to me after this presentation is over in the next week or so, or whenever you want to, and I can help you develop your plan moving forward. All right. And so this is something I pulled off of the Bureau of Labor Statistics about 10 o'clock last night. And this is pretty current. This is about 2 weeks old. So this includes COVID. And so if we look at those growing sectors right now, there's a couple things that come to mind. So science and engineering remains in a position of growth. Computer, mathematical scientists, looking good. So anything related to healthcare, anything related to the COVID response, the job market is pretty bulletproof right now. I mean, these are pretty good numbers. And so, I don't know, I think with STEM degrees right now for undergraduates, they could consider going out and getting a job, getting paid instead of spending money, and that might be a pretty good short-term strategy. And somebody asked about social science in our last session, and those are growing industries too. And as compared to in the gray, all occupations. And our outlier here, healthcare, practitioners, and techs. Right now, associate degrees, surprisingly, are beating masters, and they're beating bachelors in terms of job obtainment. And one reason for that is something that I mentioned earlier, because hands-on experience, whatever you do next, is going to translate into pretty immediate work. And so I think that is something you want to consider with any graduate program. Number one, is it more curriculum, or does it give me actual skills that I can apply to the job market immediately? I think that is a great question to ask as you evaluate different graduate programs. All right. So, you know, I love this conference because we're talking about that 30,000-foot view. You know, we have a great lineup of people, and I've actually liked this smaller environment because it allows me to talk about real examples, you know, in the session. And so now, as you're making that decision on, you know, all students out there that are listening to this, what can I do next? I've given you a lot of links over on the right-hand side here, which I want to go back and I want to highlight some of those. Can everyone see those in the chat? And so this one here is a continuation of, if you click on that link, you'll see lots of different STEM jobs and where they're at in their hiring. You'll see hiring freezes, you'll see hiring, or you'll see, you know, you'll see layoffs too. So that is a great place to check on your individual industries to see the viability of hiring. Colorado Biotech Association. This is a great list of all of those biotech life science companies that exist in Colorado. You can click right on that booklet And if you go to the end of that, you will see highlighted links of all those companies that exist. You can go right to their internship boards. You can go right to the job boards. Very convenient as opposed to doing a Google search. A lot of people in math work in Colorado Startup. And so where do STEM majors end up? Often biotech, life science industries, research development, pharmaceutical, and often all companies start off as a startup. So this is, have you ever considered a startup? Have you ever considered an internship at a startup? Lots of startup opportunity out there that often don't have the layers of larger companies. This is a great link to see events that are going to be coming to Fort Collins that are related to innovation in those STEM industries that we've been talking about. Colorado Startup Week is going to be virtual in March. A great place to volunteer with flexible hours, Colorado Startup Week. It puts you around a lot of different people, and because it's virtual, you'll probably be hosting sessions or managing rooms, whatever that looks like, I don't know. But how can you put yourself around people who are doing things that you want to do and deciding what you want to do next? Bioscience Association of Colorado. We are a partner with CSU because we are a platinum donor to those individuals. I put that there because they have a great career center and great job board function, and they put a lot of events on their calendar. For anyone out there seeking to participate in different events, that commitment to experiential learning like we've been talking about here, Colorado Bioscience Association, their goal in the state of Colorado is to get industry and students talking. And so that is one of their mission statements. So check that out. And I put the Career Center calendar in there. February 23rd, we'll be doing Biotech Connect, which is a celebration of sciences in Colorado. We're putting together that event right now. A great place to find out about internships and opportunity. All of those internships and opportunity are on Handshake. Great place to look and find for jobs. I'm gonna go back to my screen for a moment and finish up with one event. This one here to continue the conversation. I want to thank, thanks a lot, Betty, for inviting me and offering to start conversations with students and to talk about this very important topic of, should I go to graduate school? Should I not? Should I go out and get a job? And I hope I've either cleared some of that up or hopefully I've shooken that up like a snow globe, right? But in continuing today's conversation, part 2 is application process. What do I need? Resume, personal statement, reference and contacts. At the Gear Up for Grad School event, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be doing sessions on those topics. We're going to be talking about the investment in graduate school and if it makes sense for my major. We're also going to have a panel of 3 graduate students who are currently talking about, who will be talking about their experience as graduate students, what that meant for them. We're going to have a presentation on funding graduate school, all the opportunity out there that you could take advantage of on funding graduate school. That was one mistake that I made in graduate school, is I borrowed all the way through and I'm paying for it now. Don't make that mistake because there's money out there. There's money out there. So hopefully everyone listening out there, come to Gear Up for Grad School. We're going to continue the conversation that we've started here. We're going to make it more specialized to your own academic experience in helping you decide if graduate school, whether it be in STEM or any other industries, is right for you. So again, thanks for your time. Thanks for being such a good audience. And I'm going to hang out just for a second and listen to any questions and try my best to answer those if you have them. Thank you, CSU partners. Appreciate everything that you're doing and our wonderful student.
Thank you. I'm not sure.
Just a quick reminder that the committee will be in touch with a evaluation form. So if you are part of the AAC, please keep your eyes open for that and make sure to respond to any sessions that you attended. We really value that feedback. Awesome.